from the Xfinity Studios at WVON.
We're your original social media.
You're listening to Inspirational Perspective with Linal Harris.
On 1690, The Talk of Chicago.
Change up the things you see. Open your mind to possibilities. Find your power, passion, and purpose. You know it's time for you to walk in greatness. Let's murder mediocrity. Clear your goals, live out your dream. The best right now. Inspirational perspective. Open your mind to a better life. It's time to live a dream. Your purpose now. Inspirational perspective. Let's slay your goals, let your greatness flow with inspirational perspective.
Good morning, Chicago. You're listening to Inspirational Perspective. I'm your host, Linal Harris, your very own life coach, right here on WVON 1690 AM, The Talk of Chicago. Inspirational Perspective on your radio is all about murdering mediocrity and living the best life possible. So as I ask you every Sunday morning, are you living the best life possible? And this is the place to be to explore that possibility. Well, good Sunday morning, everyone. It's good to be back this morning. A blessing to be back this morning, as always. And I'm excited about today's topic. But as you guys know, we've been talking personal development. Personal Development 101 and the 7 steps of personal development. I got to tell you guys, this has probably been, I don't know if it's been my favorite series, but it's up there in terms of the opportunity to share and the fun I have doing the research and ensuring that I can adequately share and deliver with you guys every morning. What we're going to talk about today is a personal favorite of mine, because I do believe that there's an incredible opportunity for us to live with more curiosity. And today's topic is why most people lack the courage to be curious. Why most people lack the courage to be curious. Now, we got to dive into this one, man. We got to dive into this one. This is part 5, by the way, of this series. And so if you missed the first 4, what you missed was Personal Development 101. We dived into what personal development is and how to think about personal development. And then we started off appropriately with vision. How to create your life's vision was number 1. And then number 2 was how to develop your self-discipline. Because when you think about personal development, discipline is one of the most important aspects of personal development. I talked about how many of us have the idea of discipline misconstrued, and how discipline offers us in many ways freedom, and the cage is randomness. The lack of intention is the cage, and most of us find ourselves in the cage of overwhelm because of our lack of discipline. So we talked about that. And then last week we talked about how to become self-motivated, and how to really infuse the emotion, the power of motivation into your life without the need for others to necessarily do it for you. Because I think what I find often is we're waiting for someone to motivate us when it's our role, it's our job. And so all of those you can find on YouTube at this point if you missed them. So please go out and feel free to subscribe to the channel at Linal Harris and check out what you may have missed. And more than anything, make sure you stay tuned today as we dive into the topic of curiosity, because number 4 on the steps of personal development, the 7 steps of personal development, is curiosity. And I want to talk about why most people lack the courage to be truly, truly curious. Now, before I do that, I have some acknowledgments that I need to make, because my beautiful mother, she celebrated a birthday this past Monday, and I want to say happy belated birthday to her. We had a phenomenal day. Spent, say, the good portion of the day with her. Went downtown, had brunch as a family, and then went out on the lakefront, boat riding on the lakefront. So just a really good time. Ran into the McPhersons, by the way. Many of you who listen to the show, you all know Love McPherson, the relationship expert and coach. I have them on the show, so had an opportunity to see them. Haven't seen them in person, I don't believe, since the beginning of the pandemic. So that was nice to bump into that family. And more than anything, I just wanted to wish my mother a happy birthday. And her mother celebrated her 100th birthday yesterday. So my grandmother celebrated her 100th birthday yesterday. And I just wanted to send a very special acknowledgement out to her, because, man, not many of us are blessed to see 100 years. And she's been blessed to see 100 years of life. And I was just thinking about it. I put it in my post yesterday. But think about this. That means she was born in 1920. 1920, you guys. And when she was born, I was thinking about, I spent time early this year reading the Pale Rider, which is about the pandemic, how the Spanish flu of 1918 changed the world. And in 1918, the world was just readjusting from that pandemic, and it's interesting that we're in one now. And that was before the Great Depression, right at the end of World War I. So I was thinking about the time frame when my grandmother was born and everything that was going on in the world. Civil rights weren't a thing back then. And definitely people who looked like her did not have civil rights. And I've had the opportunity to learn from my grandmother over the years, and I've asked her questions, and I'm thankful that a lot of those things I have on audio when I ask those questions. And so at some point I have to organize those files. I remember asking her a question like, what did you think of Dr. King, Grandma, when he came to Chicago? And she shared, I'm not going to share her answer here because that's not what we're talking about, but just the opportunity to get that her perspective as a woman who was trying to figure out how to take care of her family back then was fascinating, still is fascinating. And so more than anything, to my grandmother, thank you for the woman that you were, that created the woman that my mother is today, both good and bad, because all of it shapes us. And a big birthday blessing to both of those powerful matriarchs in my life. I love you. So I just wanted to start with that because I felt like, man, my mom and my mother's mother, well, there would be no Linal Harris. And so just incredibly grateful for both of them and for the reality that God has given them another year. All right. Well, let's get into the topic. Got a lot to cover in the next 90 minutes or so. And so, as appropriate, I'm going to be asking a lot of questions during this show, right? You can't talk about curiosity and not pose a question. So you got to give that to me, okay? And I'm going to suggest that if you're a person that when I said the title this morning, that most people aren't courageous enough to be curious, if that triggered you a bit, good. Even if it didn't trigger you, if it just aroused your curiosity, like, man, I want to listen to this. I'm going to tell you, get it, a pen and a pad. You want to write these questions down because these questions actually help us explore the realm of curiosity in our own lives. And so I'll be posing a lot of questions, not a lot of answers, but a lot of questions today. And there are a few things that I may have an opinion on. I wouldn't say the answer to, because if you're thinking about curiosity, well, we don't know fully that it's the answer, and it's something that we have to continue to search. One of the things I say when I start my workshops is, be careful how quickly you believe me. I always say that because there's always an opportunity for us to find out for ourselves. Like, find out for yourself. And the idea of everything that I share on this show is that more than anything, it creates a spark, right? Where you're like, I need to know more about that. We talked about self-discipline. I need to know more about that, right? It's not that I'm the expert on self-discipline, but the idea is that you, in some ways, grasp what I'm sharing, but then you get curious about it, where you say, okay, I need to know more about that. Is this true? Is this true? Like, always maintaining some level of curiosity. So here's my first question. My first question, right? The show of questions on curiosity. By the way, I subtitled the show, Curiosity Killed the Cat, but you're not a cat. Because you hear that all the time. As a matter of fact, I think that's one of the ways that we begin to work curiosity out of children. Curiosity killed the cat. I mean, who says that? Especially when you think about how powerful of a competence curiosity is. But here's the first question. How is it that most children learn to eat? Right? Let's think about a child when they come out of the womb. Okay, my son is a little less than 3.5 years old. So, his infant days are still very, very clear for me, okay, because he's just a toddler now. But I remember the transition from drinking mom's milk to eating, right? He had to learn, right? Soft food, chew, the whole nine. How is it that most children, stick with me, how is it that most children learn to eat, crawl, walk, and talk successfully, but fail at life as adults? That's the first question. Just write it down. I just want us to be with some of these questions this morning as we kind of tickle our curiosity, cure our curiosity. How is it that most children learn to eat, crawl? Like, these are difficult tasks, folks. Watching my son learn how to walk, difficult task, lots of falling. But how is it that they learn to eat, crawl, walk, and talk? Right now, my son, 3 years old, 3.5, has become, and really a phenomenal communicator. Now, there's still a lot for him to learn. And when he hear new words, he'll repeat it. I'm trying to remember a word that he learned recently, but he'll repeat it, and he'll say, such and such, daddy? Like, yeah, that word means this. And you can see him look, he's putting it in his library, right? In his mental bank of, okay, this is how you use that word. Funny thing is, my brother, he used to have a gorilla that he loved, little toy gorilla. He walked around the house and he lost it. My brother said, looks like your gorilla's popped, right? Use that slang. My son picked it up immediately. Popped. The gorilla's popped, daddy? I'm like, where'd you learn that, Uncle Q? Really? Right? You know, you taught him this? Man, I said it. I didn't know he was going to pick it up, right? But curiosity. How do I use this? How do I put it out? Play it. And if we think about the range of difficulty of these tasks, walking, talking, aren't these difficult tasks to learn for a child? Like, just think about this, right? They're difficult tasks for a child to learn. So, how would you rate the difficulty in the following cases? 1, a child learning to speak for the first time, learning to speak and communicate with language, against an adult working to learn more about themselves, right? Like, let's put this in contrast. A child learning to speak and communicate with language versus over here, an adult working to learn more about themselves. Which one would you say is more difficult? Now, here's the thing, right? Regardless of where we rank it in the levels of difficulty, what we've seen, right? The evidence around us would suggest that most children will be successful and most adults won't. So why is that? How is it that we can learn to speak? How is it that we can begin to understand language? Even now, one of the things that's important to my wife and I is that Legend begins to pick up a second language, right? Because we know his mind is ripe for this. He's heavily curious. And so he could begin to pick up this second language, even though we don't speak it in the home. As a matter of fact, he's spoken, Spanish to Willa. What are you saying? Oh, okay, he's speaking Spanish. So most children will be successful when it comes to language. But when it comes to adults learning themselves, learning more about themselves, we won't. Why? Why? Why is that? Now, on a personal level, I believe it has everything to do with the level of curiosity. The level of curiosity. You see, the child is curious enough to learn. And the child also knows that there's a deficit in their knowledge when it comes to language. They're constantly hearing new things. They see that people are constantly communicating above them, around them, right? And so their curiosity is piqued. Like, how do I grasp this language? And so they're curious about it. Even now, my son, like I said, my son will come and say, Daddy, what's this word? Now, the child is curious enough to learn. But the adult typically is distracted from learning. So while children have a high degree of curiosity, I believe as adults, we have a high degree of distraction. And so the adult is distracted from the learning and assumes, this is the danger, right? And assumes they know what they need to know anyway. Oh, I know what I need to know. I went to college. I have 2 degrees. I've did my learning. I've hit my learning quota. And so I know what I need to know as they fail in life. Fascinating. Let me fast forward here. I was reading through certain journal entries, and I saw this week a few journal entries about curiosity. And so I wanted to share them. And they really are encompassing the experience I'm having with my son. So here's the first journal entry. Legend crossed the 6-month-old threshold this week and has become aware of the amazing world around him. I've never witnessed such intense curiosity and wonder. From the moment he wakes up to the moment he falls asleep, this boy has one intention, and that intention is to investigate as much of his world as possible by watching, listening, touching, and tasting whatever he can. as I teach him, I learn. I'm learning how to be a bit more curious. I'm learning how to be a bit more investigative. And I'm learning to suspend my judgments. For as much as we know, there's so much we don't know. Then I put a note to myself. Stay curious, Linal. This is when he was 6 months old. Stay curious, Linal. Now, why did I have to write that to myself? I believe, now, and I was looking at this journal entry and I'm thinking, stay curious, huh? And I told myself to stay curious. And then it made me wonder, like, what did legend provoke or make me aware of that wasn't there? And it likely was the lack of curiosity for the small things. You know, I remember him, he almost everything was fascinating. A grain of rice that falls from the kitchen table, right? He'll look at it and play with it and, you know, look at it closely in his hands, you know, feel it. If you're not careful, taste it, right? Whereas many of us, like, you know, I believe I know what that is, right? We keep moving. And so stay curious, Linal. What about you? Like, is there an opportunity for another level of curiosity? And believe me, we're just at the surface right now. Now, I have another journal entry that I want to read. And this is after his first birthday. And this one goes, I'm learning that one of the greatest gifts of parenthood is the opportunity to see the world through the eyes of your child. This will be Legend's first summer. Everything is new. The grass is new and interesting. He loves that he can pull the small, delicate blades apart with his hands. For him, dandelions bring a welcome diversity to the lawn. The yellow petals arouse his curiosity. The sky is new. The squirrels are new. The tree leaves are new. And he studies them all with intense glares. The maple seeds blown loose from the trees, they dramatically helicopter down, synchronized by the breeze. For him, all that's new. And he cheers with a shout as they land around him. For me, his perspective reminds me of all the awesome wonders of our world and God's creation. What a gift. So, what point am I making here? The point I'm making is I believe the adult is distracted from learning and assumes they know what they need to know because they know so much. Like, we know about the sky. We ignore the squirrels. As a matter of fact, we get annoyed by the squirrels. You know, a dandelion pops up in the yard and we go, oh, got to do something about that. Or we ignore it. However, whatever the intention is, right? But for a child, it's, why is that here? What is it? What does it look like? I mean, think about it. When's the last time, as an adult, you picked up a dandelion and just really looked at it and got curious about its qualities? When's the last time? What about a maple seed? When's the last time you looked at a maple seed, picked it up off the ground, opened it up, saw that while it's brown on the outside, when you pop it open, the seed is green on the inside and soft and pliable? When's the last time? And so what happens is, I believe as adults, we start to really come into this place where we really believe we know what we know. And we stop getting curious, not just about the little things, but even some of the big things. And there's a story I told some time ago about an adult who thought they knew what they knew. And the story starts out like this, right? There's a gentleman, and he owns acres and acres of land, and he got this land from his father, and his father got this land from his grandfather, and so on and so forth. And they've owned this land. This land has been in his home for for years, for decades, for centuries. And the man, he begins to get tired of his home, of his land, of his current circumstance. He's tired of plowing the fields and tending to the crops. You know, he's tired of the beautiful stream and the creek that cut through his land, and the trees and the landscape and the beauty of the landscape. I mean, it all means the same thing to him, which means another day of work. So one day, a gentleman is traveling down a path that cuts through his land, and he's working in the field, and the gentleman kind of walks over towards the fence where he is, and they meet one another. And they begin to strike up a conversation. And in this conversation, the gentleman who is traveling begins to share with this man how he's heard the news that people are beginning to move north on his continent in the search for diamonds, and how many men have found diamonds and mined diamonds and have come back home with wealth and have changed their circumstance. So as this farmer is listening, he invites the gentleman into his home and has dinner with him and learns more about these diamond adventures that this man is sharing with him. And so after he leaves and he goes on his way, the farmer is sitting to himself, and he looks over his life and looks at his home and looks at his land and how bored he is with his current circumstance and everything that's happening. And he decides that instead of staying home, he's going to leave and head north to pursue diamonds. But before he does it, he decides that he needs to sell his investment of land that has been in his family for centuries. And so he finds a willing buyer, and this buyer is enthusiastic about this purchase because he's looking at the land with brand new eyes, and he sees the creek flowing and the water and how fertile the soil is and the trees and the property, and he's excited about this land. So he purchases the land from this farmer, and farmer goes off in search for diamonds. Well, as a farmer heads north, he begins to hit hard times, and what he thought would be an easy journey turns out to be quite a difficult traveling experience. And before long, he finds himself in a big city in the north with nothing. He's impoverished, he's poor, and he's begging for food along the side of the roads. And unfortunately, loses his life, dies in that space. But the man who purchased this farm, one day as he's walking along his new creek and admiring the beauty of the water, he sees something sparkle inside the water. So he, because of his curiosity, decides to go into the creek and have a better look. And so he walks down into the creek and takes off his boots and socks and pulls up his pants and puts his toes in the soft soil surrounded by water. And he feels a prick under his foot, and so he picks up the stone that's under his foot as he begins to walk towards the shiny object he saw. And there in the creek, he sees this rock, this large rock, and it's shiny in some places and dirty in others. And he doesn't really know what it is, but he does know that it's beautiful, and it arouses his curiosity. So he takes it back to his home that he recently purchased and places it on the mantle. And often after a hard day's work, he'll come in and he'll look at that rock with curiosity. What is this? Well, one day, the same gentleman who had a conversation with the previous farmer, he's moving along the road, and he sees this new guy walking and working in his fields. And so he walks up to him. He says, "Hey, where's the farmer?" He goes, "Well, I am the farmer." He goes, "Well, where's the man that decided that was here before. And he goes, oh, well, he went north looking for diamonds. He goes, oh, yeah, I remember I had a conversation with him about that. So really, so they strike up a conversation, and that conversation leads to them, again, sitting at the table having dinner. And during dinner, the traveler continues to look at the mantle, and he's noticing the stone on the mantle. He says, sir, do you mind if I take a closer look at this stone? He says, absolutely. You know, I found this in the creek. And so they walk over to the mantle, and they're looking at the stone. And the traveler looks at the farmer and says, where did you find this? He says, well, I found it in my creek. He looks at him and he says, well, sir, you found a diamond. If it's in your creek, it's likely your land is full of diamonds. Long story short, the new farmer had his land assessed and surveyed, and it turns out that the previous farmer was sitting on acres of diamonds that he never saw because he thought he knew his land. And because he thought he knew his land, he never looked at his land with the same level of curiosity as a new farmer. So I want to ask you all, in many ways you could say that's a curiosity parable, right? But what are you overlooking in your life right now because you're not stopping to get curious about it? I imagine that same stone that was uncovered, it likely was blinking. It likely was shining in that same creek for years. And the old farmer, he just never paid attention to it because he really believed he knew his land. And he never really valued it because it seemed like the same old thing. Many of us, when we look at our lives, man, the home we live in, well, it's just not good enough. What if we got curious about what it could be? The car we drive. Well, this old thing, but what if we got curious about what it could be? Our relationships, our spouse. You mean this old man? You mean this old woman? You mean this old relationship? But what if we got curious about what it could be? When I tell the story, I know a lot of people probably think and ridicule the farmer. But I got to tell you, man, many of us, we act like this farmer in our own lives. We sit on the richest diamond mines in the world, our families, our loved ones, the people around us. And often we don't exercise the level of curiosity that we should to really fully notice the value. Last week we talked about motivation. And what I find interesting is that this farmer was motivated. He was motivated to leave. He was motivated to go on a search for diamonds. And unfortunately, he was motivated, in his case, in the wrong direction. So here's my perspective on curiosity and learning, and this is what we're going to cover in the second hour. I want to talk about the 4 stages of curiosity and learning. And these 4 stages I'm going to share with you, and then we'll dive deeper into them over the next hour. But the 4 stages, the first is the ability to navigate society and be social. That's the first stage of curiosity and learning. The ability to navigate society and be social. We're social creatures. So how curious are you? You ever meet somebody, and when you meet them, you know, they start talking and you can't get a word in, and by the time you can finally pull away, because by the way, you're like, man, how do I get out of this, right? By the time you can finally pull away, you know, you walk away and you realize they don't even know me. They have no idea who they just met because they lacked curiosity, but more than anything, they lacked social abilities. right? The curiosity, the number one, the ability to navigate society and be social. Number two is the ability to obtain specialized knowledge. Now, let me tell you something. Be curious about these, right? Because at a glance, many of us will think, okay, I know where he's going with this. Might be surprised. The ability to obtain specialized knowledge. When you think about the second stage of curiosity and learning, it's our ability to obtain specialized knowledge. Then you have number three, the ability to learn from exploration. That means going out into the unknown, exploring what's out there, and opening our minds to new possibilities. That's number three, the third stage of curiosity and learning. And number four is the ability, the most important part, the ability to be curious and learn more about yourself. Now, I've actually covered this topic before, and I named it the power of curiosity. I'm gonna dive deeper into this, but I want to start with number one, and then we'll finish up in the next hour with the rest of them. There are things that we have to know to ensure we are not ignorant of our surroundings. Things that help us navigate society. Certain things like, where is Africa on the map? Or things like, what is a hippo or a hippopotamus? Or what does that sign say and what does that sign mean? And knowing these things don't make us smart. They make us social. Like, think about that, right? Like, they make us social because I know where Africa is. I can engage in a conversation about Africa, right? It makes me social. Because I know that the red sign, that's an octagon, that I know that's a stop sign. It helps me. I can be social, right? I can be walking and talking, and we come to an intersection. I say, well, I believe this car should stop, right? It doesn't make me smart. It just makes me socially adept. I can move around with you. You can move around with me. And I say that because, in my opinion, this is the first stage of learning. This is what my son is currently learning, right? We go running in the evenings, and often I have my nephew with me. And so one of the things I've taught them is, when we get to the corner, we say, red light, red light, red light. And the idea is we stop, right? And then we walk to the edge of the street, and we look both ways, right? And they're just, this learning right now as toddlers can save their lives. But let's be clear. It doesn't make them smart in the long run. It will just make them social. Right? They'll be able to navigate. They'll be able to walk down the street. They'll be able to walk to the store by themselves. Right? This is the first stage of learning. And this first stage, often I think as we dive into it, like some of us, we actually may add it to our overall genius, right? Like, oh, well, I know that, or I've been here, or I've seen that. No, it just makes you social. It just makes you social. Now, the second stage of learning that we call specialized knowledge. The person who thoroughly masters the first stage of learning and decide to take on one or more subjects and deepen their knowledge specifically in the area of that subject, that is what we call the second stage of learning, specialized knowledge. And specialized knowledge is typically, probably likely what, the work you do today, Maybe you do analysis for an organization. Maybe you lead marketing, right? In my case, I have specialized knowledge in human behavior with setting and attaining goals, right? Specialized knowledge. And one of the things that happens as we gain specialized knowledge, again, we start to think that, well, I know now. And we forget that knowledge is infinite. And more than anything, the more that I know, the more curiosity I should bring. Because I'll tell you something, the more I learn, the more I begin to realize, like, the more I know, the more I realize I don't know. Like, most knowledge, as I acquire it, continues to make me feel inadequate in my learning. It's like, well, I didn't know that was so. What else don't I know that's so? But often what happens with specialized knowledge is we begin to really believe we know something. And so now, once I get the titles, once I get the abbreviations, the suffixes on my name, it's like, you can't tell me nothing because I know. And all we've done is just really hit stage 2 of the learning process. And by the way, whatever you think you know, you don't know it all. You can't. You never will. So this morning, part of the question is, why is there such a breakdown in curiosity? What we're going to cover as we come to the second part of the show in the next hour is I want to dive deeper into the 4 stages of curiosity and learning, but I want to talk about in depth why curiosity is such a crucial aspect of our personal development, and why I believe many people are lacking in personal development simply because of their lack of curiosity. But I also want to talk about how we've been socialized to, in many ways, look outside the lens of curiosity and really believe that we know. And a lot of it has to do with how comfortable we feel in our comfort zones. Because curiosity, by its very nature, will constantly push you against the edge of your comfort zone. But not just that. Often, the pursuit of curiosity will push you outside. And as adults, we've learned to be comfortable. And that's probably one of the biggest differences between us and our children. They live in discomfort because they're constantly learning. And we as adults, we do our best to stay in comfort, which suspends our learning. More on why most people lack the courage to be curious after the break. My name is Linal Harris. You've been listening to Inspirational Perspective right here on WVON 1690 AM, the talk of Chicago. We'll be right back. All right, good morning, you guys. How you doing?
The talk of Chicago and the voice of the nation. 1690 WVON.
Why most people
$500,000. This is Dawn
lack the courage
Information Network.
to be curious. All right, man. So I love to hear what you guys are thinking, what's on your minds this morning. Go here to the comment area.
Retirement? Here's David J. Scranton, founder of the
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
I'm David Scranton. When it came time for my mom to retire,
Let's see here.
Forced her to
All right,
work
so
longer than she should have. And that's why I started the Retirement Income Store, to help hardworking Americans 55 and over plan for the retirement they deserve.
on a scale of 1 to 10, ask yourself this, especially after this is the first hour. We're going to dive into it more. But just ask yourself this. On a scale of 1 to 10, how curious are you? And when I say curious, I mean across the board on everything, especially what you believe you know. Like, how curious are you? On a scale of 1 to 10, how curious are you? Now, I'm gonna swing through here and see if there are any questions that you guys may have. Just see if there are any questions here. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, thank you for the support. If you've gained something from the first part of the show, by all means, share the stream. Ask them in the comment. Are you curious enough to listen? Could it be that this is from Bell? Could it be that at a certain point the bar is not raised to the next level? And I think that, are you just kind of talking about? Well, give me more on that question, Bell. But I think I see where you're looking. I don't want to assume.
And watching people loot, it was officers being violently attacked, waiting for cover.
Don said most adults get conditioned to their environment and have accepted what the world has taught them. No more thrill and curiosity, my opinion. I agree. I agree with you. At a certain point in our lives, we stop learning, but should continue. I'm teaching myself Spanish. I'm in my 50s. I love that. Good word, Jerry. Mother Nature is amazing. I love this one. I need to be consistent in using Notebook to stop and process thoughts and feelings in the moment. Yeah. You know, that's honoring your own genius and curiosity right there. I love that. Potential in relationships could be a tricky one. It can. It can. That's true. But here's the thing. It's potential in relationship. Notice I said spouses and marriage. Because once you've made that hardcore commitment, it's very easy to be like, well, that, you know, this is just who this person is, and not curious about who they could be and how I can be committed to them, not just in my love, but also in their development. Right? You can't force a person, but let me tell you, man, you can. When you're in a marriage, you can definitely, you know, in some ways, get them looking. Well, what they doing over there? Why, you know, what are they listening to? And so that's one of the reasons I specifically spoke about marriage, though. I understand the intricacies of a relationship outside of marriage. It can be tough. All right, let's see here. What else do we have? Yeah, when you travel abroad, it changed the conversations you could relate to, right? It made you more social, right? First stage of learning. Turn this down.
400 West and 90.
Okay, hopefully you guys can hear me okay.
South side of Chicago. We invite you to worship here at Trinity United Church of Christ.
Leslie said, I think it's because people have the notion that once they are knowledgeable about something, they don't think they need to know anymore than what they know. Yeah.
During our broadcast every Sunday.
I love this one. Tony says, since the Purpose course, I believe that was in January where I taught that course. Since the Purpose course, I took action on a proposal. Didn't worry about the how. Deposited my first check in my business account and had 5 more coming at the end of the year. Building confidence in my ability to lead my own like I do my corporate every day. I love that. I was curious how would I do as a business owner, and I'm believing in me. Beautiful. Curiosity.
Hi, I'm attorney Ernesto Borges. I'd like to invite you to join me for the Borges Report.
All right.
Discussions about legal matters, politics.
Yeah, that man was sitting on diamonds, huh?
And the topics that concern you in your life. Start your Sunday, the Borges.
And by the way, those of you who listen on a regular basis, I mean, you're listening because you have a high level of curiosity, right? And there are a lot of people who don't. And that's because they don't have a high level of curiosity. It's kind of like, you know, whatever. I already know what he's going to be talking about, right? So this is like that's it, and that cuts off their curiosity.
The views expressed on our programs are not necessarily those of WVON.
All right, we're coming back here.
Broadcasting Corporation or our participating sponsors.
Live from from the Xfinity Studios at WVON.
We're your original social media.
You're listening to Inspirational Perspective with Linal Harris on 1690, The Talk of Chicago.
If you wanna be about it, come on, let's talk about it. Change up the things you see. Open your mind to possibility. Find your power, passion, and purpose. You know it's time for you to walk with greatness. Let's murder mediocrity. Slay your goals, live out your dream. Purpose right now. Inspirational perspective. Open your mind to a better life. It's time to live a dream. Your purpose now. Inspirational perspective. Let's slay your goals, let your greatness flow. With inspirational perspective.
All right, we're back. You're listening to Inspirational Perspective. I'm your host, Linal Harris, your very own life coach, right here on WVON 1690 AM, The Talk of Chicago. Today's topic: why people lack the courage to be curious. Why people lack the courage to be curious. And before the break, I was talking about the 4 stages of learning. I'll share them again real quick. The 4 stages of curiosity and learning. Number 1, the ability to navigate society and be social. Number 2, the ability to obtain specialized knowledge. Napoleon Hill talks about that in his book, Think and Grow Rich. Specialized knowledge. Number 3, the ability to learn from curiosity and exploration. Number 3. And number 4, likely the biggest one of all, that leads to some level of self-actualization, is the ability to be curious and learn about yourself. All right, so we ended on specialized knowledge. And before I continue on to number 3, I want to talk about one of the things that my early mentor taught me. So I shared a story about my mentor and the brief time that we spent together, and what I learned a lot in that brief time. And one part of the story that I share is when I walk into his office with my synopsis the second time, right? So if you guys remember, this is a mentor I had. I was in my 20s. Living in the basement of my parents' home, kicked out of college. I mean, really, at rock bottom in my life at that point in time. And, man, I just remember what the struggle was. Most of my friends were beginning to graduate from college, and here I was, a complete, quote, unquote, failure. And having had the opportunity to meet my mentor for the first time, he asked me to read the first 3 chapters of the book, Think and Grow Rich. And I remember I was upset when I left his office because it took me 90 minutes to get there on public transportation, 2 trains and 2 buses. And I was like, man, why couldn't we just have that? Like, why couldn't he just tell me? I didn't understand that he wanted to see my personal efficacy, right? You know, he wanted to see me put in the effort. At the time, I didn't understand that. And he sent me home to purchase the book, Think and Grow Rich, and read it. Read the first 3 chapters. And so I read the first 3 chapters, and I came back to him that next month. And by the way, to be clear, I read that first 3 chapters like days before I had to meet with him. And quickly wrote up the synopsis. And so I bring the synopsis back to him. And I remember I was so proud of it, by the way. I had it in a manila folder, printed out. And at the time I don't think I was working at Kinko's yet. I wasn't working at Kinko's yet because I remember how difficult it was for me to get it printed out. And so anyway, I get to his office. I slide this manila folder onto his desk when he finally meets with me. And he doesn't even open it. First question that he asked me was, "Young man, what's your purpose?" And I remember looking at him confused, like, what are you talking about? And what's your purpose? I said, I don't know. He says, well, in the book, the first chapter, Napoleon Hill, asks you to write down your definite purpose on the planet. And so, what's your purpose? And I remember looking at him and saying, well, I didn't know you wanted me to do the work in the book. And this is when my mentor taught me a lesson that I believe has made all the difference in my life. One of the lessons that has made all the difference in my life. And what he taught me was how to read. You might say, well, Linal, you didn't know how to read in your early 20s? Well, yes and no. See, I knew how to recognize the symbols, but I didn't understand that reading at the very core of its nature meant the ability to comprehend and apply. I didn't get that at the time. As a matter of fact, to that point, when you look at the true definition of the word read, most people don't know how to read. I'm going to say that again. When you really break down the true definition of the word to read, right? Read. Most people don't know how to read. Most people are illiterate. Now let that sink in. And I would have been practicing that level of illiteracy in my life if it weren't for this lesson. So he said, well, the first 3 chapters, man, had work in them. You didn't do the work. Like, well, I didn't know you wanted me to do the work. And I remember he slowly folded. He didn't even look at the synopsis because in his mind, you haven't obtained the knowledge, so it doesn't make sense for me to read the synopsis. Now, at the time, I didn't understand this, right? But he folds it, and then he takes it in his hand, and just crumples it and tosses it in his trash next to his desk. Oh man, I was just, in that moment, I was furious on the inside. Now, I didn't let it show out of respect, but I was furious on the inside. And then he broke down for me what reading was. He said, Linal, I need you to understand what reading truly is. Reading is a complex cognitive process of decoding symbols in order to construct or derive meaning. That's what reading is, right? And he actually took out a dictionary and read it to me, right? A complex cognitive process of decoding symbols in order to construct or derive meaning. And then what he said is, to read successfully, you must fully comprehend what you are reading. Like, you have to completely get it. If you don't comprehend it, you haven't truly read it. Just because you know what the symbols say doesn't mean you've read the sentence. Now, that made a huge difference because when I went back and read those 3 chapters, I saw and learned things I didn't learn the first time, right? But what I understood then was that what I had to do was get curious about my ability to comprehend what I read. And so let's break down what comprehension is real quick. Because again, right, most people, we're not going to be as curious about these things as we should. So what does comprehension mean? Definition number 1 says the action or capability of understanding something. Okay, so we get that. So am I capable of understanding everything I read? Now ask yourself, when is the last time you read a page and thought to yourself, I don't get that, and kept going? So did you really truly read that page? because if you didn't comprehend it, there's a page missing from your knowledge that you should have. But here's definition number 2, right? And this is definition number 2 is the archaic. Like, so this is, you got to be careful when you read the dictionary, okay? Because definition number 1, we think we got it, right? The action or capability of understanding something. You're like, okay, well, that's comprehension. Not fully. Definition number 2 takes it home. And this is the archaic definition of comprehend, right? Or compre. It means to include, inclusion. So if I comprehend something, that means I now include it in my being, in my knowledge, in my practice. So ultimately, what comprehension means is to include, full inclusion. Now, when you read, are you fully including what it is you read? And by the way, one or two things have to happen when you comprehend something. There are things that I read that I disagree with. I'm like, I don't believe that, right? And so, because I comprehend it, I understand what they're saying, I make a conscious choice to reject it. It's conscious, and I know I'm rejecting this, okay? There are other times where I read something and I go, wow, that's good. I never considered this. And then in that moment, I have to grab my journal, right? This is why, some people say, I read books like this, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, man, look, it takes me a while because I want to make sure I fully comprehend it. And so then I'm saying, okay, well, I need to go get my journal because how do I begin to include this into my life? And let me tell you, man, there are many things that I understand that I have not fully comprehended. Why? Because I still lack the ability to include it in my life on a consistent basis, right? And until you can include it, you don't fully comprehend it. So, what I want to do, since we're talking about curiosity, right? And we understand that comprehension is a deeper level of the ability to acquire knowledge, specialized knowledge, which is one of the stages of curiosity. Let's talk about the 4 levels of comprehension. Well, first you have level 1, which is literal, right? And literal means stated facts in the text, like data, specifics, dates, traits, settings. These are the literal. This is the literal level of comprehension, right? What's the data say? So for most of us, like let's take COVID-19. COVID-19 is, you say, well, this many people have passed away. Well, that's data. That's literal. We can comprehend that. That's level 1. Level 2 is inferential. And inferential means to build on facts in the text, right? So predictions, sequence, and settings. So for instance, on CNN this morning, they were saying that Dr. Fauci is saying that we need to hunker down for the fall and winter. It's going to be tough, right? Well, I knew that, right? Now, I knew that from reading The Pale Rider, how the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918 changed the world. One of the things I comprehended in level 2 comprehension, right, inferential, was that, wow, if that pandemic lasted 18 to 24 months, it's likely this pandemic will last the same. The ability to predict and look at sequences, right? We're having the same conversation about do masks work, do masks not work, that they were having in 1918. I'm like, okay, all this looks simple. Or similar, I'm sorry, not simple, similar. And so if I'm comprehending this at level 2, that means that this is going to be a tough winter. You guys have heard me say that. Okay. All right, so what Dr. Fauci is saying is not, most of us know that because we have an inferential level of comprehension on what's happening. Level 3 is evaluative. And level 3 is the ability to make a judgment of text based on fact or opinion. right? So this is where we start to put our judgments in. So I comprehend this, and this is what I would add, right? So fact or opinion, validity, appropriateness, comparison, or cause and effect. Because of the coronavirus, the economy has taken a toll. It has taken a toll on the economy, right? So this is evaluative comprehension, all right? Now, this is the part where most of us run into some trouble on level 4. Applied comprehension. How we respond to what we've learned and include it, right? So response to text based on the author's language, values, imagery, style, and purpose, right? So how we apply it, how we respond to it. Let me give you an example. President Trump, just the mention of his name triggers people, right? So this man can say something that is true. And because of how I feel about him or whatever I'm thinking about him or whatever it is, my ability to fully comprehend what he says at level 4 can be impacted in terms of, am I going to apply it? Because, well, he's a liar, right? That's what everything he says is a lie. Well, that's not true, right? It's not. Now, does he lie? Well, he's been proven to lie, and he even admitted that he lied about knowing about the coronavirus, right? But again, this is not a defense of President Trump, by the way, right? He's definitely not a favorite of mine. But again, what about you? So what happens is he's speaking, and my ability to apply comprehension to what he's saying drops off because of who the author is in the clash in values, imagery, style, and purpose, right? So this is an example of how comprehension can all of a sudden just elude us based on who's saying it. These are the 4 levels of comprehension. Now, here's the crazy part about this, right? This is taught, these 4 levels of comprehension, because a lot of times you guys ask me for resources. This is taught in upper primary education programs, right? So I got this from school teaching text. Okay? So this is what children should be getting taught about comprehension. That many of us as adults, we've forgotten. Now, what should be my learning objectives? For me, I can locate information that is direct and indirectly stated within a text, as well as deepen my understanding of the purpose of the text. That's my objective, based on anything that I read, anything that I'm attempting to learn. I can locate information that is direct and indirectly stated within the text, as well as deepen my understanding of the purpose of the text, which all requires curiosity, by the way. So let me ask you this, for those of us who, just don't like President Trump, have you ever listened to him with curiosity? Like, where is he going with this? What is he trying to say? What is he trying to relate here? Have you ever listened to him with curiosity? And you can say that for, in this case, both candidates, right? But this is not a political show. But I just really want to talk about why we don't get curious about certain things. We just dismiss them. And I'll tell you guys, I'm curious. When he's talking, I'm curious. Like, what? Where's he going with this? Jim Rohn said this: don't wish it was easier. Wish you were better. Don't wish it was easier. Wish you were better. Great segue into the 3rd stage of learning and curiosity. The 3rd stage of curiosity and learning comes with exploration. And at this point, we begin teaching ourselves. We learn by experiencing things. And this requires us to step outside of the comfort zone. So let's get into that conversation. See, because many of us, we stop at 2 in our lives, right? We cover stage 1 and 2, and then when it comes to specialized knowledge, that's the end. We get those degrees, and that's it. And when it comes to really exploring things outside our comfort zone, we stop. That makes me uncomfortable. This conversation makes me uncomfortable. Oh no, I don't travel. That makes me uncomfortable. Being on a plane, how long? Ooh, no, I'm not comfortable with that. You're going to be on a boat? That makes me uncomfortable. You went into the jungle? Oh, that's uncomfortable. You swam with sharks? Now that makes me really uncomfortable, right? I mean, it's like we just sit in our comfort zones. And the third stage requires of us that we explore. Again, I talked about my son at the beginning of the show and how willing he is to explore things. This is what I love about my son, right? The other day we're going into the basement. It's dark. It's dark outside. And I thought to myself, now, he hasn't been socialized yet to be afraid of the dark. And so I let him go first. I said, you go first. And I watched him run right into the darkness because he hasn't been socialized, right? All he wants to do is explore. Was it uncomfortable? Yes. He said, Dad, it's dark down here. I said, so? And he said, okay, you don't care? I shouldn't care. Right into the dark. Right? But then somewhere along the way, as adults, we're like, it's dark down here. I'm not going. It makes me uncomfortable. And then we miss out, right? Like, what's in the basement? Well, we assume we know. Monsters and spiders and bugs and things I don't want to see. But are you willing to be uncomfortable and explore? So at this point, we begin teaching ourselves, right? And the further you stray from your zone of comfort, the more you can explore the potential of your human experience. But here's the sad part. No exploration, no learning. And by the way, no exploration comes from a lack of curiosity. Why would my son run off into the dark basement? Because he's curious. Where are we going? What's down here? People who have not mastered this level, by the way, they typically think inside the box. And by the way, I gave that quote from Jim Rohn where he says, don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. How do you get better? You get better by getting outside of your box. That's the only way you get better. Because everything in your box you got. And so you are who you are, you're where you're going to be. Like, period. You want to get better, you got to get outside the box. But the problem is, are you curious enough? Are you willing to get uncomfortable? So most people find themselves thinking inside the box, and they're trapped in the box. And they're trapped because they avoid exploring anything outside the immediate realm of their understanding. Anything outside the immediate realm of their understanding. Well, I'm not going to go to that. And by the way, these are our internal thoughts. These are things that adults don't say out loud, right? But you said it to yourself. Well, if I go over there with those folks, they think they smart, and they'll get to talking, and they're gonna want me to talk, and I'm not gonna go because then they might think I'm stupid. And so we stay trapped in the box. Versus showing up and saying, hey, I'm excited to be here. I know you guys know things I don't know, and I'm excited to learn from you. Forgive any ignorance I bring to the conversation. See, another way of thinking about this is we're trapped because we avoid exploring anything outside the immediate realm of our understanding. And in layman's terms, it's simply because we don't understand. And that scares us. Like it scares us. Like as an adult in this world living, trying to make the best of what I've created, what I've done, it's scary to actually tap into the reality that, wait a second, I don't get this. I don't understand it. But what if we took on the childlike curiosity where, but I need to know. Let me give you an example. I've literally had somebody tell me, Linal, I don't understand how anyone could spend $100 to go to a seminar. I don't get it. I don't understand. What I told them, well, until you try to figure it out, you'll be trapped by your lack of understanding. See, wouldn't I want to understand something that I don't currently understand? Like, wouldn't I? Like, have you ever thought to yourself, like, okay, so, like, and I keep using this political climate because it's so decisive and people get so upset. But have you ever thought to say, well, why would someone support Trump? Or why would someone support Biden? Like, why? I just want to understand and actually engage in a conversation with the primary purpose of understanding. Like, I want to understand. I'm not here to debate. I want to understand you because I'm curious about you and your perspective. See, to be successful, we have to have an overwhelming curiosity. It's curiosity that leads to your success. Now, somebody might say, well, Linal, last week you said motivation is the key to success. Yeah, motivation is. But curiosity leads the way. And ask yourself this. How curious am I? On the break, I asked the Facebook listeners, I told them, I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how curious are you? Ask yourself that. Now, let me prove to you how we operate as adults. I'm going to share a personal story. When I got the opportunity to visit Rwanda on official government business, I almost didn't go. My wife will tell you. And here's the funny thing. I've told this story before. And I always find it somewhat humorous when people say, what? You almost didn't go? Well, it's easy to say that because you know the full story now. Right? But one, I had never been to Rwanda. Two, is at a very busy season in my life and in my business. Three, in many ways, it was beginning to push on my upper limit. What do I mean by my upper limit? Like the place where I stopped. I had made a declaration around Africa. I had created the opportunities in Ghana. But Rwanda, too, it seemed too good. And so, hey, we're inviting you. We're going to take care of portions of your trip, but you got to pay your own ticket to get here. And I'm like, I don't know. Thank God for a good wife. She's like, you got to go. Yeah, you got to go. But like inside of me was like, I don't know. Why? Why would I say that? Because the whole thing just made me uncomfortable. I mean, what do you mean I'm going to be meeting with government officials? What do you mean I may have the opportunity to meet the president? Like, what do you mean that I'm going to be doing government work? I hadn't done those things. It made me uncomfortable. And so as a result, like it's that discomfort began to erode my curiosity. Now, mind you, I love to travel, but the discomfort was eroding my curiosity to explore this new opportunity. Now, this is how the comfort zone works. And we talk about this in coaching, and this is a framework I learned in my coach training. See, in the very middle of your comfort zone are your fears. The things that scare you the most. The things that you don't talk about. The things that sometimes we haven't even fully distinguished. Things we're afraid of from childhood, from experiences we've had years and years ago, decades ago. And so right there smack in the middle of your comfort zone is your fear. And then what happens is, so we can operate in the world, we create this way of being that is our self-defense. In coaching, we call it your automatic way of being. You don't even have to think about it, right? This is how you show up. And it's how you cover your fears, right? Nobody walks around, unless they're mentally ill, walks around, I'm afraid, right? But let's be clear. Most people, when they walk into uncomfortable situations, no matter how docile, have certain levels of fear. It's our automatic way of being that has taught us, okay, now, make sure your shirt's tucked in. Make sure you don't have no spinach in your teeth. Matter of fact, go to the bathroom before you start to engage people. Just make sure you're cool. What is that? That's your self-defense. The reason you go do a bathroom check is because it makes you feel comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. Right? So then, your comfort zone is made up of these things. And by the way, it's also made up of wanting to feel good, right? Going for feeling good and trying to reduce the feelings of bad as much as we can, but also ultimately trying to create the great sensations and feelings that we've had in different portions of our lives. And that all makes up our comfort zone and our experience of being comfortable. And so when anyone ever says, hey, you want to explore this over here and it's outside your comfort zone, that's why the knee-jerk reaction is almost always, nope, I don't want to do that. And this is why I can say with such boldness that most people lack the courage to be curious, because we've grown accustomed to comfort. And curiosity requires that we get uncomfortable on purpose, that we engage in uncomfortable conversations on purpose, that we explore things with curiosity that might make us uncomfortable on purpose, that we put ourselves in uncomfortable situations. You learn more about yourself. It's one of the things I like about camping, because you don't know what's going to happen, right? So you kind of create a setup for comfort, but you're almost always guaranteed some level of discomfort. And so, the whole experience is one of curiosity. What will I need? And then when things are happening, okay, what are we going to do? Okay, it's raining right now. What are we going to do? Right? Just a constant engagement of curiosity. So this leads us to number 4. The most uncomfortable stage of learning. Learning who you really are. Now you might say, well, Linal, why is that the most uncomfortable stage of learning? Because there's a whole lot of stuff about us that we don't want to know. Now, let me say it a different way. That is the most uncomfortable stage of learning for me, because there's a whole lot about me that I always don't want to know. It makes me uncomfortable. You think like that? You see the world like that? What if other people know? Oh, that's uncomfortable. You see, the journey of life is a series of constant awakenings. There's a really good book called Shambhala. I can't remember the author's name, but the name of the book is Shambhala. And there's 2 chapters in the book. One is called The Dawn of the Eastern Sun, and the other chapter is called The Cocoon. And in this book, the author basically breaks down that in our lives, we have these moments of awakening, right? We experience some level of transformation. We go through coaching and we see new things about ourselves, and we notice new ways of being, and we say, okay, well, this is who I intend to be, and we build on that. But often what happens is we take that awakening as the awakening, not realizing that we have to engage in a series of constant awakenings. The idea of life is not that you arrive once, that you awaken once, but that you're constantly awakening. And in order to live a life where you're constantly awakening, you have to live a life of constant curiosity. So in the book, the author of Shambhala says, what happens often is that when we have our awakening and we become a butterfly, we expect that the life of the butterfly will last. But no, there's a cycle. The butterfly dies, it gives birth to new caterpillars, and they must go into the cocoon to transform once again. Now, we don't have the lifespan of a butterfly, but if you really think about it, in many ways, I learned something today. I experienced an awakening. I use it as best I can. It only takes me so far before it lets me down. And then I have to go back into a mode of transformation again. Marshall Goldsmith has a book that says, and the title of the book is, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And what he's talking about is, okay, so you've arrived, but now what? The journey of life is a series of constant awakenings. And unfortunately, I believe what happens is many of us, we experience the beauty of the first awakening or the second awakening or the third awakening. And we say, oh, that's been 3. That's it. I'm done. I got it. And we forget that, no. If you continue to live, if you continue to be curious, the awakenings are infinite. But are you willing? Are you willing to be uncomfortable and go back into the cocoon of transformation again? And experience a brand new awakening as a result of that? But see, because the thing about the cocoon is uncomfortable. It's jammed tight in there, like you can't move and you're stuck. And it doesn't feel good. My business is stuck. My marriage is stuck. My financial situation is stuck. It doesn't feel good, but am I willing to do what it takes to come out of this cocoon and awaken again? And see, the thing is, the longer you're in a cocoon, the more comfortable you can get. That's why I say some of us are married to the struggle. And maybe this is your opportunity to begin breaking out. Like, I want to break out. I got to do something different. I got an email from a client yesterday. I still haven't talked to her. But she was just sharing her dismay and sharing with a friend the price she's paying for coaching. And I don't know what happened, but what I imagine when I talk later today is I'm going to find out that she got ridiculed. And they're like, really? You did that? What's wrong with you, girl? You got. Because when most of us, when we think about transformation, you're like, what? You gonna leave the cocoon? And by the way, you don't want to. A lot of us, we love our friends, but we don't want to see them leave the cocoon before us. So you don't fly away now. Don't fly away. It's uncomfortable. The 4th stage of curiosity and learning only starts when we've been awakened to ourselves. This is the part that makes me sad, man. Because most of us, we haven't been awakened to our greatness. Most of us, we haven't been awakened to our purpose. And most of us, we haven't been awakened to our power. And the reason we haven't been awakened is because we lack curiosity about it. Are you curious about how great you can be? Are you curious about your greatness? Are you curious about your purpose? Why you were put on the planet? What it is that God would have you do on the planet? Are you curious about that? Like, is that curiosity so overwhelming that is your life's priority? To get underneath that curiosity? Are you curious about your power? See, we celebrate power. Malcolm X, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Marcus Garvey, W.E.B. Du Bois. I mean, the list goes on. We celebrate greatness. But are you curious about your greatness? Like, and are you so curious that if that curiosity begins to lead you to a path of uncertainty and discomfort, would you keep going or would you stop? See, because that's what happens. Many of us, we get curious, but then when it starts to get uncomfortable, when the uncertainty starts to tick up, we go, whoa now. This is where you have to suspend curiosity, because Curiosity did kill the cat. But you're not a cat. True awakening occurs in every aspect of your being. And some of us, we refuse to really look and learn at every aspect of who we are. Every aspect of who we are. And so let's get the first piece out. All right, let's get this on the table. Let's get this on the table right now. Since you're listening, let's just get this out in the open. Because this is not the most popular topic, but it's necessary. First, hey, did anybody tell you that you're imperfect? That you're flawed? Did anybody tell you that fundamentally you're imperfect? Like you know, that this is just going to be a constant affliction? Anybody share that with you? Anybody tell you that? Anybody been honest enough to have that conversation with you? Did you know that? See, that in itself makes people uncomfortable. Here you go, Linal. Did you know that fundamentally, as a human being, your makeup, you're not all good? You also have some bad. Did you know that? Are you aware of that? Are you willing to be curious about that? And then here's another question. What do you know about that bad? Have you awakened to your weaknesses and your flaws? Have you awakened to your bad habits? Those difficult ways of being that you bring in relationship? That you bring into a relationship? Are you awake to that? Like, do you know how you can be? Do you even know? Have you fully awakened to you, fully and completely? Are you in conversation with yourself about yourself? See, here's the thing. Most of us, and I'm not going to even say most of us, but y'all know how it goes. It's easy to be in conversation about somebody else. Oh, that's easy. Yeah, you know. I don't know who he thought he was when he showed up yesterday. You see what he had on? Huh. And you know you can't afford that car. Like, that's an easy conversation. But what about you? Have you talked about yourself to yourself like that? And I'm not talking about it in a negative way. I'm talking about with the curiosity for, man, where's the gap in who I am right now and who it is that I intend to be? Where's the gap? How am I showing up beneath my potential and my greatness? Do you know your passions? See, we're talking about you now. This is the fourth stage of learning. Know thyself, Socrates. Fourth stage of learning and curiosity. See, one of the reasons it's difficult for us to practice curiosity in other places is because we're not practicing curiosity right at home with me. Do you know your passions? The things you're passionate about? Do you know your talents? The gifts God has given you? Like, have you been so curious about you that you've actually distinguished those things? Do you know your strengths? Like what you've really worked hard to bring to the table. Work so hard that you don't want to leave them off the table. You want to continue to bring that to the table because, strength can become weak. Talents remain. They're just God's gift. Do you know and understand your roles in life? When I talk about roles, like I know I'm a father. But do I understand the role of a father? Like, do I fully understand the role, the responsibility of what it means to be called a father? See, this is the conversation of curiosity that we should be in, but we're distracted. What are your top 3 passions? And by the way, passion is the basic ingredient to motivation. You want to know why you're not motivated is likely because you lack passion. And next to passion is purpose. Those are 2 of the main parts of motivation. There are more, but those are the 2 main parts of it: passion and purpose. People want, well, Linal, I'm not motivated. Well, probably don't know yourself. That's why. Start there. What drives your curiosity? Stephen Kotler, he shared this in his book, The Rise of Superman, Decoding the Science of Ultimate Human Performance. And in his book, he said that curiosity is the basic ingredient of passion. So you want to be motivated? Well, you got to start with curiosity. Are you curious? And this is why it's so necessary. I talk about it every week. I can't help it, but this is why it's so necessary to know you. You have to know the best of you, and you have to know the worst of you. Are you curious about that? I believe many of us fall into unfortunate circumstance because we don't know the worst of us. Hey, I know I shouldn't walk into a bar, right? I've talked to a gentleman before. He said, no, man, I can't do that. Used to be an alcoholic. The beauty of it, like a lot of us will say, poor him. No, that's phenomenal. He knows the worst of himself. And he's actually made concessions for it. What about you? What's the worst of you? Where are you exhibiting addictive behavior? Are you curious about that? This helps you devise a plan to beat you. This helps you fortify yourself against you because, again, remember, your biggest enemy will always be you. My biggest enemy is me. Biggest enemy is me. And if you want to know what attacking your dreams look like, well, this is what it looks like, man. Like fully gaining a new curiosity about yourself. See, personal development improvement will get you to the starting line of the race called life, but then there's work to do. And the question is, are you ready to do the work? I mean, this series is personal development. 7 steps. And I could have did one of those moves where I just walked down the 7 steps in one show. As a matter of fact, that's what I was tempted to do. And I said, no, let's go deeper. Like, what is it like to spend 2 hours talking about curiosity? What could we learn? So where does critical thinking fall into the scope of curiosity? See, a critical thinker looks at a situation from a different angle and multiple lenses. Like, listen to this, right? Critical thinking requires an open way of processing thought that typically uses a form of questioning to derive a new answer. For example, if X happens, how will that impact Y? Let me give you an example. If Biden is elected, how will that impact the United States of America? If Trump is elected, how will that impact the United States of America? If A means that, could B mean this? That's critical thinking. Like really thinking through it. But as you think through it, doing the work you need to do to understand their policies, right? Comprehension. See, a lot of times we talk at the top, man. We're not really looking in depth at what's really going on because that requires work and it makes us uncomfortable. There's a constant curiosity and wondering available to the critical thinker, right? The critical thinker is constantly curious. Critical thinkers will often notice and suspend their bias. Suspend their bias while refusing to leap towards knee-jerk reactions and judgments. Like, I'm not just going to leap to this. I want to really sit with it. So critical thinking can have a positive impact on the quality of life a person experiences. The more critical a person is in their thinking, the more self-aware they will be. And self-awareness is one of the keys to personal development. As a matter of fact, when we talk about discipline, it is the first phase of self-discipline. This morning, are you a critical thinker? All right, so as we end, I want to give you some practices throughout the rest of the week. As a coach, I don't give homework, I just give practices. Because these are things you want to continue, not just now, you never complete. Early this year, I took the time to write down my top 25 curiosities. These are the things I'm curious about, the things I want to learn more about. I'll share some of them. High performance entrepreneurship. I'm curious about that. And by the way, I want you to do the same. What are your top 25 curiosities? Top 25 curiosities. Number 1, high performance entrepreneurship. Helping people quickly distinguish their life's purpose is number 2. Number 3, my creative connection with God. Number 4, global travel. Number 5, exploring exotic and unique cultures. Number 6, identifying what makes people tick. Number 7, what defines beauty. Number 8, the subliminal impact of music. Number 9, what makes poetry great poetry. Number 10, how does fame work? Number 11, how does money work? Number 12, what is the best way to age? And what is the psychological impact of aging? Number 13, what is the formula for creative captive movies? Number 14, how does art gain value? Number 15, how have social media platforms impacted social behavior? Number 16, what is the formula for ultimate influence? Number 17, what is the link to powerful branding? Number 18, what are the top 10 life hacks of all time? Number 19, what is the best personal development formula? Number 20, how does human psychology impact our success? Number 21, what is the spiritual impact of melanin? Number 22, how does religion seize its power? Number 23, what is the true history of Africa? Number 24, how do we truly harness our spirituality in human form? And number 25, can and how does one master marriage? Those are my 25. But what are yours? Back into it. As we end, I want to share a poem I wrote on curiosity this morning. And this is something I wrote a few years back, thinking about my community, our people, with the lens of curiosity. I think it's the appropriate way to end here on WVUN this morning. I look at my people with curiosity. These foreign brown people from across the sea. These people that sprouted from the same seed as me. These people who are linked to my ancestry. I look at my people with curiosity. These powerful people swallowed by a lack of identity. These creative geniuses that sway the world's economy. These magicians with wishes waiting on a genie. I look at my people with curiosity. These free folk bound by the consumption of branded luxury. These creative geniuses wearing clothes and shoes they can't afford, made in Paris and Italy. The same magicians that weave the vibrant colors thread of Kenti. I look at my people with curiosity. These educated folk who don't know their history. These creative geniuses blending global culture, bending global culture while their culture goes missing. These people so willing to help others when they desperately need the uplifting. I look at my people with curiosity. I love these people whose skin is shaded brown like me. I pray for these people to unshackle themselves mentally. I teach my purpose and identity. Are these people, my people, listening? I look at my people with curiosity. Are you listening? Do you hear me? Your purpose is the link. Your power is your identity. You've been listening to Inspirational Perspective. My name is Linal Harris, your host and life coach, right here on WVON 1690 AM, the talk of Chicago. Be blessed.
under arrest. It's not clear what happened.
All right, you guys, that's the show. I love you guys, man. I do hope that this show provided something on a deeper level. And if anything, I look forward to more conversations quite like this. Share the stream if this made a difference for you. I know putting it together made a difference for me. So, all right. God bless you guys. Have a phenomenal Sunday.